the client is always right. I expect that this is a saying that most of you have heard at one point or another in your lives. But if you take a second and really think about it, is it something you believe in? Let's do a show of hands. How many here believe that it's a good guideline to follow? Yeah, if you're a client. I didn't see many hands. I kind of think it might be because you saw the title of my presentation, perhaps. I don't know. Anyways, I think it's a really easy guideline to follow if you're a client. If I'm out shopping, for instance, it's very clear to me that the customer or the client, me in this case, is always right. And I don't think it's just me either. I think that for a lot of people, this is like the cardinal rule of good customer service. But in my professional life, I work as an IT consultant. And when the tables are turned and I'm no longer the client, well, my viewpoint kind of changes. I work as a functional architect, or after yesterday's keynote, I should probably say a functional conductor. No matter what I call myself, what I basically do every day is I question absolutely everything, including truths like the client is always right. In my spare time, I like to read fantasy books. And sometimes I start daydreaming, and I think, what would my job look like in a cool fantasy setting? I picture myself as the guardian of all functionality. Someone who says, "You shall not pass," just like Gandalf did in Lord of the Rings. But when I say it, it sounds more like, "You shall not get what you want unless you tell me why you need it." My goal with this talk is that all of you guys will become guardians as well, because I think it's a very important role, and we should have guardians in every role in software development, not just functional architects. But becoming this kind of guardian, well, it can be hard, because very often your clients come to you not with a requirement, not with a need, but a very specific solution. I want a button. It's going to be red. It's going to be placed right up there in the corner. Yes. And I've thought this through, and I know exactly what I want, so just make it for me. But no matter how well thought through it is, and I'm not saying that it isn't, if you just accept this as gospel and you just say, "Oh, we'll make it, no problem," you're actually not doing your job properly. Because whenever a client asks you to do something, they're really looking for your software expertise. And I'm talking about clients in a really broad sense here, by the way. It doesn't matter if you're an IT consultant like I am, or if you work in a product development company, and the client is inside your own company. You do have a client, and what your client is looking for is an expert in system development. And that is important because you and your client, you have very different expertise. The client is the expert in his domain, in his business, whether that business is banking or building roads or whatever it might be. And in those types of businesses, we as software developers very often fall short because that's the client's expertise, not ours. They don't teach us that stuff in Programming 101. But there is actually, as a side note, an entire software methodology centered around bridging this gap. I won't go into the details here, but if you haven't already, check out domain-driven design. But anyways, I digress. So, the client contributes with business knowledge. What can we contribute with? Well, obviously, everyone knows it's our job to make software. But I believe that it's equally important that we contribute to finding the good solutions. Because finding good IT solutions to a business problem, that is skills that is smack down in the middle of our core capabilities, much more than it is our clients. In this area, we are the experts. I like to compare the functionality that the client wants with an iceberg. What the client sees, what he wants, is just a teeny tiny part of the iceberg. That is where the red button is. And when you look at it from that perspective, well, everything looks great, right? I mean, there's sun, there's water, what could possibly go wrong here? Well, sure. But if you look beneath the water, things look a little bit different. Because when you look at it that way, you see that any given software solution comes with its own set of consequences. Maybe the solution they want is so hard to maintain that if you make it, the system will become antiquated, kind of like a dinosaur. Or maybe the cost is just a lot higher than if they had chosen another solution that would be equally as good at solving their problem. Or maybe this solution will bog down the entire system, making it screech to a halt. Or maybe it requires hidden integration with external systems. Oh, the horrors, right? But maybe, just maybe, there is a better way to achieve their goal than the solution that they ask for. The challenge is that no matter how skilled the client is within his business, he has absolutely no way to look beneath the water. That is territory that only we can see, because that is the specialized expertise that we bring to the table. We have studied software development and worked with it for years, and we have the actual experience, so we kind of have the underwater goggles that the clients just lack. And so if we just blindly accept that the client is always right, and we just go ahead and make that red button because, well, they told us to and they should know best, right? Then we have cheated them out of expertise that it is our job to give them. Now, that being said, you don't make good software by insisting on being a king on your own little country of expertise. So let's go back and look at the differences between our clients and us once more. Yes, we have different experience, but it's when we join forces that things get really exciting. It's in the meeting between the two that the magic happens, and that's where the really good IT solutions are born. However, it's not easy to reach that magical place when what you get from your client is a ready-made solution and the answers are laid down like law. This is what I need, just make it, please. But still, this is a time to bring out your inner guardian and to start asking the tough questions. What do you really need? What are you going to use it for? Why do you want it? What is the benefit that you're trying to achieve? If we rewind a bit and take a closer look at the saying the client is always right, that was a mantra that stores used to get good customer service. But was their end goal really that the client should always be right? I somehow doubt that. I think that if we dig a little deeper and guess what they're trying to achieve, it would probably be somewhere along the lines of the client should be satisfied. Now that is something completely different. That is something that can be solved in very many ways, besides the client being right. With that in mind, we as software developers can start asking ourselves, what's the best way to make our clients satisfied? Is it to do exactly what they ask us to, down to the pixel-perfect placement of that red button? Because that's what they say they want? Or could it be that the clients would actually be happier if we gave them good advice and they ended up with the best solution to their problem instead. Not too long ago, we were asked to make just such a little red button. This button was supposed to print a list of all customers, both their names and their addresses. And that seems like a fair enough request, right? But still we hesitated, because knowing what we knew about that system, we just couldn't see the need for such a button. So we asked and we asked, and in many different ways, but we still couldn't get a clear answer out of them as to what they needed it for. And this, by the way, is a very clear indicator that the solution you've been asked to make might require a little bit more digging into. They kept saying that it would be useful for a lot of things, but they had a hard time coming up with the specific things. We kept digging, and in the end, they told us that they would use it to find errors from where the National Registry sent them the wrong addresses. What they were going to do with this button was they would print a list of all the clients and their addresses, check the addresses manually, and then update the wrong ones, again, manually. So when we realized what the problem was, it became glaringly obvious that a new button wasn't the right solution. So what we ended up doing, instead of making a button that no one really needed, we fixed the underlying problem instead. We fixed the integration with the National Registry. It was actually just a teeny tiny tweak, and they got the correct addresses automatically, which solved their original problem and then a couple of more to boot. And in the end, it's a better investment to fix the underlying root cause of the problem instead of just bloating the IT systems with a few new buttons just in case. As I said earlier, it's not always easy to start asking these questions. And I don't always succeed at being the guardian I want to be either. But don't let that discourage you. If you want to become a guardian, then just start asking questions. You'll get very far just by asking questions in general. But there is one question that is more powerful than all of them, and that is why. Why does the client want what he wants? I would go so far as to say that if you don't know why you're making something, then don't make it. Because if you don't know why you're making it, then how on earth can you know if you're on the right track? Now that's possibly the most important thing that I like to say today. If you see something that is odd, something that doesn't make sense, something that is needlessly complicated, something that could have been solved better, dare to speak up and start the discussion, no matter what your role is. So some of you are probably just developers in large projects with lots of architects, and you might be thinking, well, they've thought of this already. It's not my job. Well, guess what? I disagree. It is your job. Because in my opinion, one of the things that make a great developer is the ability to ask questions and to think critically. And not just make what you've been asked to make without thinking twice if it's the right thing you're making. So I'd like to encourage all of you today to do just that. Go out in the world and become guardians. And remember, in the software world, we're not fighting dragons. We're fighting ready-made solutions, and we're fighting the thinking that the client is always right, so we should just do as they ask us to. And the best weapons we have in this fight is daring to ask questions and think critically. And when you do that, you'll be making so much better software. Thank you.